they said she couldn't have children. Then her human husband changed everything. For as long as she could remember, the young woman had always been different. Growing up, she had heard the whispers of doubt that followed her wherever she went. It wasn't that she lacked ambition or strength, she simply carried the weight of an unspoken truth, the belief that she would never be able to have children. A rare medical condition had been diagnosed early in her life, and the doctor didn't offer much hope. Her heart had been filled with dreams of motherhood, but those dreams seemed out of reach. The parents were supportive, but even they couldn't deny the reality of what the doctors had told them. She had always been the optimistic type, though, determined to make the best of what life had given her. But no matter how hard she tried to ignore it, the thought that she could never become a mother was always there, hanging over her. She had gone through the motion of treatment, visiting specialists, trying different medications, and undergoing various tests, yet each time she received the same disappointing news. Nothing had changed. There were moments when she felt the heavy burden of it all, questioning whether there was any hope left. She wanted to be a mother, to experience the joy of holding a child in her arms, but it seemed like fate had other plans. Her friends, though well meaning, didn't always know how to comfort her. They would offer advice, suggest alternative treatments, or even talk about adoption, but nothing could replace the feeling of loss that lingered in her heart. She wondered if she would ever get the chance to feel that kind of love, the pure, unconditional love that only a parent could know. Over time, she began to accept that life might not go the way she had once imagined. Maybe she would never have children of her own, but deep inside, she still held on to a small flame of hope. It wasn't easy to stay hopeful when everything around her seemed to suggest otherwise, but she knew she had to try. Her determination didn't waver though. She focused on the other aspects of her life, her work, her passions, her friendships. All of these things became the cornerstones of her world. Yet, no matter how much she immersed herself in those things, there was always a part of her that yearned for something more. Then one day life took an unexpected turn. She met him. He was kind, patient, and had an understanding that felt rare in a world full of rushing. At first, she didn't think much of it. She had seen many people come and go, but something about him felt different. He wasn't put off by her medical history, nor did he shy away from talking about the possibility of having children. He accepted her for who she was. As their friendship grew, she found herself confiding in him. She told him about the medical diagnosis, the years of uncertainty, and the dreams she still carried. And to her surprise, he didn't look at her with pity. Instead, he looked at her with admiration and respect. He didn't promise her anything, but he did offer something she hadn't realized she needed: his unwavering support. She had never thought much about the possibility of being with someone who could truly accept all of her flaws and all. But as their connection deepened, she began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, she could have a life she had never imagined, a life full of love and support, regardless of whether or not children were part of it. There were still doubts, of course, the fear that her body would never allow her to have the family she dreamed of was always at the back of her mind. But with him, she felt like anything was possible. The thought that they could face any obstacle together became a powerful force in her life. The couple spent more time together, sharing their hopes, their fears, and their dreams for the future. Each moment with him gave her strength, and she found herself imagining a life where she didn't have to carry the weight of her diagnosis alone. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to build the family she had longed for. But there was still one question that lingered in her mind. Could it really happen? Could she really become a mother? As their relationship grew, so did her sense of hope. She never expected to meet someone who would not only accept her condition but also make her feel like there was a way forward. The idea of motherhood had always seemed so distant, but with him she began to see a glimmer of possibility. His presence brought a sense of calm, as though together they could face whatever came their way. One evening, while sitting on the porch, the conversation turned to the future. They talked about their dreams, their desires, and eventually the idea of children. It wasn't a topic she had approached with anyone before. The doctors had made it clear that natural conception wasn't an option, and the idea of adoption, while beautiful, still carried its own complexities. But this conversation felt different. There was no judgment, no pressure, just two people openly discussing what they wanted out of life. She looked at him, unsure of how he would respond. She had always feared that someone might walk away the moment they heard the full truth of her medical history. But to her relief, he simply took her hand, his gaze steady and sincere. "I don't care about the doctor's prediction," he said softly. "I care about you, and if you want to have a child, I'll be right here with you. We'll figure it out together." His words left her speechless. She had always been so focused on the limitations of her condition that she hadn't considered how much love and support could transform her perspective. The weight she had carried for so long began to feel lighter. Maybe there was a chance. Maybe there was still a way forward, despite the odds. Over the next few weeks, they discussed their options in more detail. They talked about treatments, specialists, and even the possibility of in vitro fertilization, IVF. It was a long shot and the path ahead would be full of challenges, but the idea of giving it a try felt like the first real step towards something meaningful. She had never been one to back down from a challenge, but this felt different. It wasn't just about her anymore, it was about them as a team. Together, they could face whatever came their way. And though the road ahead was uncertain, she felt an overwhelming sense of hope. They began to research everything they could about IVF, the cost, the risks, and the success rates. She consulted with doctors who explained the process in detail, offering both optimism and caution. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was a chance, a real chance for them to create a family together. The more she learned about the process, the more she realized how much it would take out of both of them. IVF required emotional resilience, financial commitment, and a willingness to face potential setbacks. But through it all, she knew one thing for certain: she wasn't alone in this journey. And so they made the decision to proceed with IVF, taking the first step into a new chapter of their lives. With every appointment, every taste, every moment of preparation, they grew closer and their shared commitment to building a family solidified. There were still doubts, still fears of failure, but together they faced those fears with determination. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she had control over her future. The dreams that once seemed impossible began to feel tangible, as though they were within reach. She wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was clear: no matter what happened, they would face it together. Her heart was full of hope, and she felt like she had found a partner who believed in her, in them, and in the possibility of something truly miraculous. Together, they were ready to take the leap and see where this journey would take them. As the days passed, the couple's excitement about the possibility of becoming parents grew, but so did the uncertainty. IBF was not something either of them had ever thought much about before, and now that they were embarking on this journey, the reality of what they were facing started to settle in. It was a process that demanded patience, both emotionally and physically. The tests, the injections, the constant visits to the clinic, they were all part of the experience, but it felt like an emotional roller coaster that was hard to navigate. She could feel the pressure mounting as the IVF procedure began. Each visit to the clinic was another step into the unknown, and with every passing moment, the sense of anticipation mixed with anxiety. Would it work? Was this truly their chance to have the family they dreamed of? There were so many things they didn't know, and yet they kept pushing forward. Her husband, always supportive, stayed by her side every step of the way. It wasn't easy for him either. The waiting, the uncertainty, the endless rounds of appointments, it was exhausting for both of them. But he remained her rock, always there to hold her hand when she needed it. Whenever the doubt crept into her mind, he would remind her of the strengths they shared, how far they had come together, and how they could face whatever came next. The procedure itself was challenging. The shots and medications made her feel out of control at times, and her body felt like it was rebelling against the process. There were days when the emotions were overwhelming, when she couldn't help but wonder if it was all worth it. She had moments of fear and doubt, but through it all, her husband never faltered. His calm presence soothed her, and he reminded her to take things one day at a time. They spent countless nights talking about their dreams for the future. They both wanted to be parents, but the journey to get there was harder than either of them had anticipated. They talked about their hopes for the future, about the kind of parents they would be, and about the child they both longed to hold in their arms. The waiting was the hardest part. After the procedure, there was nothing more they could do but wait. Each day seemed to drag on, with the constant question hanging in the air: will it work? The uncertainty gnawed at her. Every little feeling, every slight change in her body made her wonder if this was it. Could she really be pregnant? Or would she face another disappointment? Despite all the unknowns, they tried to remain hopeful. She would remind herself of the love and support that surrounded her. This wasn't just her journey, it was theirs. They were in this together, and no matter the outcome, that was something she could always hold on to. Weeks passed in what felt like a blur. The days were filled with a mix of hope and fear, each one blending into the next. It wasn't easy. The uncertainty of the situation hung over them like a cloud, casting a shadow of everything. But through all the waiting, she found herself more and more grateful for the love they shared, for the support of her husband, and for the unwavering commitment they had made to one another. Finally, the day arrived, the day when they would find out whether all their efforts had paid off. She held her breath as they walked into the clinic for the final test. It was one of those moments where everything seemed to stop and all that mattered was the result. She tried to stay calm, but deep inside, her heart was racing. Wow, what if it didn't work? What if they had to face another disappointment? Could she handle it? Her husband was by her side, holding her hand, offering reassurance. Warm. Whatever happens, we'll face it together, he whispered. His words brought her comfort, but the uncertainty was still there. She knew that the road ahead would be difficult no matter the outcome, but she also knew that with him, she had everything she needed to face whatever came next. When the doctor finally entered the room, she could tell by the look on their face that the news was coming. Her heart thudded in her chest as she waited for the words that would change their lives forever. And then the doctor smiled. "You're pregnant," the doctor said, the word so simple yet so powerful. In that moment, everything changed. The world seemed to shift around them as the reality of what they had achieved began to sink in. Armor time. She felt an overwhelming wave of emotion, relief, joy, disbelief. Tears filled her eyes as she looked at her husband, who was smiling so widely it seemed like his face might. They had done it. Against all the odds, they had created life together. He pulled her into an embrace, holding her tightly as if afraid to let go. "We did it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We really did it." It was a moment neither of them would ever forget. They had come so far, faced so many challenges, and now at last they had something real to hold on to. Their dream of becoming parents had finally come true. As they left the clinic hand in hand, they couldn't stop smiling. There was still so much to do, so much to prepare for, but they had crossed the first hurdle. They were going to be parents. It was a dream they had dared to imagine, and now it was coming true. But even as they celebrated, they knew there would be challenges ahead. The road to parenthood wasn't over, it had only just begun. But for now, they allowed themselves to bask in the joy of this moment, knowing that together they could handle anything that came their way. They had already proven that. They made plans for the future, how they would prepare their home, what kind of parents they wanted to be, and all the things they would teach their child. They talked about names, about the future they would build together, and about the love they would give. For the first time in a long time, everything felt right. In the days that followed, they embraced the news with gratitude and excitement. She began to feel the weight of what was ahead, but it was a different kind of weight now. It was the weight of new beginnings, of dreams fulfilled, of a future that was no longer just a distant hope but a reality they could touch. As the weeks passed, they eagerly awaited the arrival of their child, excited to start this new chapter of their lives. They were ready, more than ready, to face the challenges that would come their way, knowing that together they could accomplish anything. They had built this future on love, trust, and hope, and now they were about to share it with someone new. The day finally arrived, the day they had been waiting for. After months of anticipation, worry, excitement, and everything in between, the moment they had longed for was here. She could feel the nerves coursing through her, yet at the same time she was overwhelmed with an indescribable sense of joy. Her husband was there with her, holding her hand, his warmth offering comfort as the world around them began to feel surreal. She had gone through so much to get to this point, from the challenges of IVF to the endless tests and procedures. It felt like a lifetime of uncertainty, but now that she was on the verge of something incredible, all the struggles seemed worth it. She wasn't just becoming a mother, she was doing it with someone who loved her completely, who believed in her, and who was willing to face every obstacle by her side. Their little one was about to enter the world. It was a moment that could never truly be put into words. The excitement, the fear, the hope, they all mingled together, forming a kind of anticipation that left her breathless. She had dreamed of this moment for so long, and now, as she lay there, she couldn't believe it was really happening. She took a deep breath, knowing that soon she would be holding her baby in her arms. Her husband was there beside her, his presence as reassuring as it had always been. The love they shared had carried them through every trial, and now it was about to bring them the most precious gift they could ever imagine. The labor was long as expected, but with each passing moment, she felt closer to the end. She knew this was only the beginning of a new journey, but she couldn't help but think about how far they had come. There had been moments when she wasn't sure if this day would ever come, but here they were about to start their family. Finally, after hours of labor, the cries of their baby filled the room. The sound was both overwhelming and beautiful, the kind of sound that made everything else fade away. Her heart swelled with love as she looked at her husband, tears streaming down her face. They had done it. Their baby was here. As the doctor placed their newborn in her arms, she couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. This tiny person, this beautiful little human, was theirs. She looked down at her child, feeling an indescribable sense of connection. All the pain, all the waiting, all the uncertainty, it had all led to this. She was a mother, and nothing would ever be the same again. Her husband leaned in, kissing her on the forehead as he gazed at their baby with tears in his eyes. She is perfect, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. War, we did it. The bond they shared in that moment was stronger than ever. They had fought together, supported each other through every step of the journey, and now they were standing on the other side with the family they had always dreamed of. Their love had brought them here, and their love would continue to guide them as they navigated this new chapter of their lives. As they looked at their baby, they knew that this was just the beginning. There would be challenges ahead. Parenting was not going to be easy, but they were ready. They had faced so much already, and now that they were parents, they knew that together they could handle anything. They would raise their child with the same love, care, and dedication that had gotten them to this point. In the weeks that followed, they settled into their new routine. Their baby was a constant source of joy, and every smile, every coo, every little milestone filled their hearts with pride. They spent sleepless nights tending to their baby's needs, but they did it together as a team. There were moments of exhaustion, of course, but even in the hardest times, they reminded each other of how far they had come and how much they had already accomplished. As they watched their baby grow, they marveled at the little person who had come into their lives. She was already starting to show signs of her own unique personality, and every day brought new discoveries. They couldn't wait to see what the future held for her, knowing that they would be there every step of the way. Her husband was more amazing than she had ever imagined. Watching him with their daughter made her heart swell with love. He was patient, kind, and so deeply invested in their family. He had always been her rock, but now seeing him as a father, she realized just how much more he had to give. He was everything she had ever dreamed of in a partner, and now he was everything their child needed in a father. The love they shared, the bond they had built was the foundation of everything that would come next. They had created a family born not just of biology, but of love, hope, and determination. The journey had been long, but it had led them to this incredible moment. They were parents and they were ready for whatever came next. In the quiet moments, as they sat together as a family, she would look at her husband and their baby and realize just how blessed she was. This was everything she had ever wanted, and it was more than she had ever imagined. Their little girl had changed everything, and their love for her would be the guiding light of their lives. They had walked through the storm together, and now they were standing in the sunlight holding their dream in their arms. And as they looked to the future, they knew one thing for certain: no matter what happened, they would face it together as a family.